Ethan Walker had worked these lands his entire life, riding the same dusty trails his father once traveled. The Arizona woodlands were harsh, unforgiving, and silent, yet on this particular afternoon, an uneasy feeling tugged at him as he guided his horse along the cattle lines. The wind carried a strange stillness, and just as he crossed the edge of a dry creek bed, something caught his eye, a small, motionless figure curled beneath a thorn bush. Ethan's heart dropped. He slid off his horse and ran, the crunch of gravel echoing through the canyon as he knelt beside the tiny shape lying in the dust. The child looked barely alive. His skin was pale, lips cracked, and his ribs pressed against his small frame as if he hadn't eaten for days. His long dark hair and traditional beadwork hinted at his Apache heritage. Ethan spoke gently, but the boy's eyes fluttered weakly, unable to focus. Without hesitation, he scooped the child into his arms, feeling the frightening lightness of a body that had been starved too long. With steady but urgent strides, he carried the boy back toward his old wooden cabin hidden between towering pines. Inside, the cabin smelled of fresh firewood and warm stew. Ethan set the boy near the fireplace, wrapped him in thick blankets, and worked carefully to revive him. He warmed broth, spoon-feeding it slowly while the child's trembling fingers clung to the blanket for warmth. Hours passed before the boy finally opened his eyes fully, but even then, he spoke almost nothing. Ethan asked for his name, where he came from, what happened. Silence was the only answer. Only his fearful gaze revealed the trauma buried deep within him. Over the next few days, Ethan remained close, checking the boy's temperature, letting him sleep, and making sure he ate small meals. The boy seemed alert yet guarded, watching everything around him as though expecting danger at any moment. Occasionally, in the middle of the night, Ethan heard him whisper something in a shaky voice. On the third night, he finally made out the word home. It was soft, broken, and filled with a longing that made Ethan's chest ache. Whatever the boy had endured, his only wish was to return where he belonged. Word of the mysterious Apache child began to spread quietly through the nearby towns. Locals gossiped in diners, truck stops, and gas stations about the starving child found by the Walker Ranch. Some expressed concern. Some simply added it to their list of daily stories. But others, those who kept an ear out for children at risk, listened closely. Among them were members of the Hells Angels chapter that patrolled the outskirts of the region. Their reputation was rough, wild, and intimidating, but beneath the leather jackets and roaring engines, many of them carried one rule with unwavering loyalty: protect those who can't protect themselves. 2 days after Ethan found the child, a pair of angels rode through a nearby town, their engines rumbling like thunder. When they stopped for fuel, they heard the story from an old shopkeeper who spoke with a mix of worry and fascination. A starving Apache boy, found alone, taken in by Ethan Walker. The angels exchanged looks, nodding silently. They didn't interfere in tribal matters, and they didn't trespass without reason, but a lost child was enough reason for them to keep watch. They didn't announce their intentions. They didn't visit the cabin. They simply began monitoring the roads leading toward Ethan's ranch. Back at the cabin, Ethan slowly gained the child's trust. The boy ate more, slept better, and even ventured a step outside to feel the morning sun. But his eyes still held fear, as though shadows of his past followed him everywhere. When Ethan asked again where he came from, the boy clutched his blanket, stared at the mountains, and repeated only one trembling word: home. Ethan knew what he had to do. He would find the boy's family, no matter how far or dangerous the journey might be. What Ethan did not know was that somewhere beyond the ridges, someone else was also searching for the child. Not his family, someone far more dangerous. And as rumors traveled from town to town, the angels realized the risk was growing. The boy wasn't just lost, he might have escaped something. Something violent. Something ruthless. And just like that, the Hells Angels silently placed themselves between the child and any threat that dared to come near. The fourth morning dawned gently, sunlight washing over the cabin's weathered logs like gold dust settling on old memories. Ethan was pouring coffee when a sudden, heavy knock shook the wooden door. It wasn't frantic, just firm, deliberate, and full of purpose. Ethan froze for a breath. Few people ever came this far into the Arizona woodland. Slowly, he set the mug down, wiped his hands on his jeans, and stepped toward the door. As he pulled it open, the world outside seemed to still, as though holding its breath for what came next. 3 Apache women stood on the porch. Their clothing was traditional, hand-woven shawls, beadwork glinting softly in the sun, and braids wrapped with ribbons that fluttered in the morning breeze. Their expressions struck Ethan deeply. Each face carried a mix of fear, exhaustion, and profound hope. Their eyes searched him, not with suspicion, but with the desperate urgency of mothers seeking the truth. Behind Ethan, inside the cabin, the small boy peeked around the corner, recognizing the figures instantly. His fingers tightened around the blanket as he stepped closer to the doorway. The eldest woman stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she clasped them together. She took a deep breath, and her voice emerged soft yet unshakably emotional. "We were told a white rancher saved our child. We have come for him." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He turned slightly, giving the boy space to decide. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the child, eyes brimming with tears, slowly approached the doorway. The women gasped quietly, covering their mouths. Relief washed over their faces so fiercely that Ethan felt the emotion in the air like a warm, breaking wave. Before Ethan could say a word, another sound cut through the quiet morning, the low, distant rumble of motorcycle engines rolling across the hills. At first it seemed like thunder approaching from the far side of the valley. Then it grew louder, clearer, deeper. The Apache women tensed, instinctively stepping closer to the child. Ethan lifted a reassuring hand. "It's okay," he murmured. Within moments, a line of motorcycles emerged from the trees, sunlight flashing off chrome as the Hells Angels rode toward the cabin in a disciplined, protective formation. The Angels slowed their engines and circled the open clearing around the cabin, parking in precise positions that formed a ring of iron and defiance. Black leather vests, patches, and boots made them look intimidating to anyone who didn't know them, but their presence radiated something different today: duty. Watchfulness. A silent promise that nothing would harm the child or those who had come for him. The Apache women exchanged uncertain glances, and Ethan gently reassured them. "They're here to help. They've been watching over the place since word spread." The child stepped onto the porch, and the eldest woman knelt, arms open. He rushed into her embrace, burying his face against her shoulder as she wept softly into his hair. The other two women touched his back and whispered prayers in Apache, their voices trembling with gratitude. Ethan stood still, humbled by the raw beauty of the reunion. Behind them, the Hells Angels removed their helmets, resting them on their bikes respectfully, watching the family with quiet understanding. Not one man spoke. They didn't need to. A long, powerful silence settled over the clearing. It wasn't an awkward silence, it was sacred, the kind of moment that nature itself seemed to honor. A rancher who acted with compassion. A native family reunited after unbearable fear. And a brotherhood of bikers who often carried misjudged reputations but now stood shoulder to protect innocence. It was a rare, unexpected unity, different worlds meeting not with conflict, but with shared humanity. Ethan finally stepped closer and addressed the eldest woman. "He's been safe here. I'm glad you found him." She looked up at him, tears still in her eyes. "You saved our son. Our people will not forget this kindness." Ethan simply nodded, humbled. He wasn't looking for praise. He was looking for peace, for the boy's peace, and for closure to whatever nightmare had separated him from his family. As the women prepared to take the child home, Ethan noticed a subtle shift among the Hells Angels. A few riders moved their bikes slightly, straightening the formation to make a clear path through the clearing. It wasn't a show of dominance, it was a gesture of respect. Protection to the very end. No danger. No interference. Just safe passage. The Apache women recognized the gesture. One of them placed a hand over her heart in gratitude. When they finally began walking back toward the trail, the boy paused. He turned and looked at Ethan, offering a small, grateful smile. Ethan smiled back, tipping his hat. The Hells Angels watched silently as the family disappeared into the pines. And for a long moment after, no one spoke. Different cultures, different lives, different worlds, but for this single morning, they stood united by one simple, powerful truth: protecting a child is a duty shared by all good people.